Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Below, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Sheriff Jerry Clayton from Washtenaw County. Welcome back to Conversations.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me back.
Sure. And you're in your midway, just beyond midway of your third term.
Yeah.
I tend to ask you this every time, but just get a sense, how has it changed in the years you've been sheriff?
Gosh, so internally, we really
Okay.
focus mostly on changing the culture. Really talking about why we exist. We exist to serve. We have most of our success through our partnerships with not just other law enforcement agencies, but community organizations, human services organizations. So we've grown in terms of changing who we are and how we serve. We've also grown quite a bit just from a staffing standpoint.
You mentioned who you serve in that. How has it changed as far as working with the public? You mentioned community groups. Why and how has that developed?
Oh my gosh. So we have really had a strong focus on community engagement, not just having programs like doing picnics and things like that, but really true community engagements where we look at some of the challenges that are going on in our community and how do we work collaboratively to address those, from the mental health issue. In 2017, at the end of 2017, the residents of Washtenaw County passed that millage. That was a collaborative effort to get that money. Now it's a collaborative effort to how that money is spent.
And to what degree you're able to find some common ground?
That's right. And I'll tell you what. So the common ground is we all have a shared outcome, that we want to make sure we provide the most supportive environment for those that have behavioral disorder, right? So mental health or substance use disorder. And we have agreement on how we do that our focus should be more upstream. So although I represent a criminal justice agency, we know the best solutions are before people get into the criminal justice system. So how do we do diversion? How do we do assessment? How do we support families with people with mental health challenges so people don't end up in crisis, so they behave in a way where police have to get called, police respond, people will end up in jail. So from that perspective, I think that's the best example of how our approach really manifests itself in the community, that approach to mental health.
To what extent do, whether it's the mental health issue or other community service type issues, vary within the county?
So that's a great question. So we talk about this a lot. So it's a different, we always talk about culture and community, but there's so many different communities, regionally based, neighborhood based, and part of our job is to ask the right questions in the community. So the way we deliver police services in the eastern part of the county is different than the way we deliver services in the western or maybe the northern part of the county, because there are different expectations, there are different challenges. But our approach is the same. So the activities that our deputies see sometimes is going to be different.
And the outcome, or the desired outcome, is similar.
Yes.
But whether it's a rural area, as much of the county is,
Right.
or the more urban Ypsilanti and Arbor tract that are going to be looking at different issues. Yeah.
No, so it's funny you say that. So the outcomes are very similar. People want to just have a good quality of life. They want to feel. So we've been talking about how do we redefine public safety. So when you think public safety, you think police or fire. When we say public safety, we should think all those things. We'll go back to the days of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The physiological, the safety piece, let's hit those basics, right? So all of those things factor into whether there's public safety. So at the end of the day, we all want to feel safe and be safe, be able to walk our neighborhoods. Now, what that looks like is a little different in different communities, and the strategies that we collectively should employ is a little different. But we all want the same thing.
You mentioned throughout the county wanting the same thing. How has it changed since you entered as sheriff in working with the different townships? And we've had sort of peaks and valleys in the different sort of collaboration or fighting against
lack
almost.
thereof.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about this not too long ago. I guess this is wood. Let me knock on wood. It's relatively quiet. So when we came into office, it was in the middle of the whole police services contract fiasco, and the Board of Commissioners had stood up a group called the Police Services Steering Committee, and they had really started a lot of the work. And we came in and worked with them. We worked with the county to establish this police services model about how the money's spent. And you know this, Jim. Yeah. If you take care of the money, a lot of the other things will fall in line.
Yeah.
So we've done that. So that's the first part. And the other piece is, let's talk about how we deliver the service. Let's have a conversation about, let's align the expectations, say, in Ypsilanti Township, what the services should look like and what the desired outcomes are. And then let's talk in Manchester what the services should look like. So we've gone through that process. And right now, we're all pretty much on the same page.
Does the sheriff's department or some national group set a expectation on how long it should take to respond? Because that's one of the things I know in the city, whether it be the police or the fire, response time. And obviously it's going to vary, I would assume, in the different townships and whether you have sort of on-site deputies or if you don't.
Right, right. So there's no national standard. And we're also talking about, we're responding to what? So responding to a property crime will be different expectation in terms of how you get there to responding to a crime in process against a person. So there's a life and safety issue. So when we look at response time, and response time for us is not the gauge of the quality of the service. So I can get there right away and treat you in a bad way or fail to investigate. It's just one small piece. We are cognizant of response time, especially as it relates to crimes in progress and crimes involving people. So that's really, really important, and there's no excuse for a lot of delays. And for us, it's setting the expectations. So when we look at certain staffing levels and things going on, having a conversation with the community and say, look, if you have a call for service during hours where we're not staffed, we're going to send the closest car, and it's a property crime. Somebody smashed your mailbox. It's still important to us because it's important to you. But the response time is not going to be the same as if you report somebody that's broken into your house and they're still there. So having those kind of conversations are important.
One of the issues over the years has been working with the other governing bodies and how to save money by having some collaborative efforts in that, whether it's the 911 or whatever. Is that still ongoing, and any new progress in new ways that your department, along with whether it be the township or the city, is able to work together?
Yeah, there are a number of different collaboratives outside of the criminal justice, but I'll take you back to originally, so Metro SWAT, Metro C&T, going from 4 teams to 1. We've seen some significant economies of scale, how we address cyber crimes. We have a group of staff from different agencies that are in one location that respond, because none of us could afford to staff a unit like that on our own. It's too much. It's especially too much equipment, all of those type of things. Dispatch is unique in the sense that over the years we continue to add jurisdictions that receive dispatch services, starting with Ypsilanti, and then the city of Ann Arbor, and most recently Pittsfield Township. Okay. So again, it's one of those things is those particular municipalities look at their budget and they see, we have a challenge budgetarily. What services can we collaborate with? Dispatch seems to be that first one. And we've told, here's what we know, and I think you would say this. If you call 911, you don't care where that dispatch center is, right?
No.
And you don't care who answers the phone. You just want them to answer the phone right and get you the resource you need.
And why wouldn't the whole county be under one dispatch? In other words, when I call 911, should it matter where I'm calling from? Right. Or is it going to matter what phone I'm using? As you say, I don't care other than how quickly can you come here to help me. Right. But the whole county's not unified totally.
No, because each jurisdiction, they have their choice, right? They get to decide what kind of police services they want, the dispatch services. And there's something about having your own, right? That local control where we can set the standard for what kind of services we get and what the priorities are. And this fear that if we go to this larger group, that we get lost in the mix.
Ann Arbor will get it all. Or
Ann Arbor will get it all, or Ipsy will get it all, and we won't get that specialized service that a dispatcher knows my name and know who I am, and I'm going to get.
Or what the street is that I'm calling and wanting service, they know.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll just say this. So for each one of the groups, municipalities from Ipsy to Ann Arbor to Pittsfield that has come on board, ask the people, has the quality of service changed?
And one other area that over the time you've been in office has been addressed in a variety of ways is the county jail. And because you came in when it was still expanding or had been
Right.
constructed but
we had
hadn't
an
taken
opening.
over.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And it's all open now. One of the issues has been staffing. Where do you stand as far as a department in being able to staff it for the number of clients you have?
So we are somewhere between 18 and 22% vacancies.
Okay.
Right.
Means what as far as numbers around?
25 staff, 20 to 25 staff, or 25 openings.
Okay.
And that's a national phenomenon. So I don't know if a lot of people know, but I do a lot of this work across the country, and in a lot of different jails. I was just in Miami-Dade, which is the 8th largest, Maricopa, which is one of the largest, and each one of those jurisdictions is facing the same thing. Percentage-wise, they're struggling 15, 20, 25%. And I think there are a number of different factors that are involved, but it's a struggle. And then when you plop us down in Washtenaw County and you look at the competitive wages of law enforcement, deputies and police officers, we're towards that lower end. So it's hard to compete to get people in the door. And the last piece is we're not going to lower our standards. I will say this, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, the staff that we brought in are amazing. They're outstanding. They're great public servants. So we know that the standards we have work, and we're going to stick to them.
This 15% plus or minus, what kind of background do they need to have? I mean, do they need a college degree?
They don't need a college degree.
Okay.
We would prefer some higher education, and there's some competencies that we're looking for, right? So unlike what people think and they see on TV, in corrections, we know that safety and security is achieved through managing people's behavior. So what we're looking for are supervisors. The same thing you would look for in a good supervisor, someone that sets expectations for you, someone that provides you the resources to meet those expectations, that holds you individually accountable for your behavior. So if we say we want you to do this and you do something else, I address that behavior. Someone that understands that giving people simple positive incentives, saying thank you, good job, is really how you manage behavior. So everybody would say, you want that in a corrections, in a jail? Yes, we do. Because what we realize is the people that come into our jail are human beings that for the most part, until they came in, they were sort of functioning outside. So why do we have this assumption that people are going to go into jail, they're going to lose their minds? We believe if we set the right architecture and we have the right people in place to manage it, we create that safety and security, and we position people to reintegrate back into the community in a good position to be successful. So we're looking for unique people. We're looking for social workers, teachers, all the traditional professions where those kind of competencies are evident. We want them in our corrections staff.
Well, we're going to take a short break, come back and look more to the future of what you hope to work on both this year and over the next couple of years. Thank our viewers, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Sheriff Jerry Clayton of Washtenaw County, and one of the issues over the last maybe 3 to 5 years seems is the expansion or the opioid crisis and how the communities are expecting and hoping to deal with it. As a county, what does your department or what do other policing agencies presently do, and what do you hope to be able to do in countering this?
So again, this is another collaborative effort led by public health and a number of nonprofit organizations. So there are a couple different stages, right? So the first one is about education, really getting people to understand what opioids are, what's the real gateway. You know, prescription drugs continue to be the gateway. You know, advising folks that prescription medication shouldn't be left in your house. Get those out. We have red barrels all throughout Washtenaw County. We do prescription drug takebacks on a I don't know, every 3 or 4 months to try. So that's on the front end. Then there's the enforcement piece. So again, really active with our LawNet comes in and the other agencies we all collaborate around, you know, really trying to get illicit drugs off the street. And then the third piece is, you know, unfortunately, is the reactive piece, right? It's for those that are addicted, how do we support them? Let's not criminalize the behavior. Let's address the behavior with support, with assessment and treatment. So all of those things are in the mix. We just wrote for a federal grant to help us in terms of the opioid crisis around diversion. It's all around diversion and prevention. And then we were contacted by Bloomberg's philanthropic arm. I think he said that he was going to commit about $50 million to help the country fight the opioid crisis. State of Michigan, state of Pennsylvania, per capita, at the highest overdose deaths in the country. So the group that is fulfilling this for Bloomberg reached out to us and said, are we interested? They got $10 million for Michigan. We won't get the $10 million, but they're really, really interested in the strategies that we're laying out, and they want to see how they can partner with us.
How will that money get spent? I mean, as you talk about, you know, how you want to deal with it beforehand and after the fact, but realistically, how is that money spent?
So a lot of it, again, is around education and prevention, right up front. So how do we educate? How do we get into neighborhoods and communities and talk about how opioids have become
Is that more of an adult issue than a younger issue? Is it across the board?
It's across the board. So it's across age, gender, socioeconomic status. So there's no place in Washtenaw County that hasn't been touched. And we continue to see an increase in emergency room visits. So the large bulk of that money we want to spend is on diversion. So for those individuals that are already addicted, and we see them in our communities, let's reach out to them, let's connect to them right away, and let's get them connected to the right resources. So another piece of the money has got to be, now you got to have the services.
Right.
So how do you have those services? So that's a lot of the point.
If you're able to educate and they come for help, you need to have the ability to help them.
That's exactly right. So if we come in contact with police or whoever else, respond to someone that we know are in crisis, and let's not put them in the jail. Now they're ready for help. We have to have someone to connect them to the sort of resources.
And you mentioned earlier that the county voted a year and a half ago or so to tax themselves and a portion of that goes to mental health.
Yes.
Now, will the opioid crisis fall into that, or is that sort of a whole separate funding?
So, you know, Jim, that's a great question. So what we find out is there's a lot of the dual disorder, right? So a lot of folks with mental health disorder, if they can't get the right services, they self-medicate. So we've seen in our jail, we see that about 60% of the people in our jail are on some kind of psychotropic medication, and about 70% of that 50% also have some kind of substance use disorder. So the dollars, the money that's been raised for mental health would undoubtedly also help with the substance use disorder.
Looking to the future, we're now halfway through about 2019. Are there programs or issues that you are addressing throughout the rest of 2019 or looking more to the next 12 to 18 months? What are some things you'd like to see implemented?
So the biggest things for us is how do we now implement the plans we have around mental health? I mean, so mental health, substance use disorder really is taking up a lot of our time and attention. We really want to implement what's called law enforcement assisted diversion. That's LEAD. something that you've seen in King County, Washington, and Albany, New York, that really positions police officers so if they come into contact with someone that has drugs or drug paraphernalia that we've identified for personal use, and we know this person's an addict, as opposed to taking them to the jail or trying to get them into psych hospital where there's no room, can we connect them with social workers? Can we connect them with service providers outside of the criminal justice system so they can start to get support? You know, community mental health is getting ready to open a 48-hour, they call like a crisis resource center, where people with substance use disorder, mental health disorder can get triaged and stabilized in a 48-hour period. I think that's a start. So really a lot of our focus, I mean, we're still gonna do the normal stuff, right? Run to jail, arrest bad guys, but we want to try to get as upstream as possible around this issue.
You mentioned arrest bad guys.
Yes.
And most criminals don't either stop or enter at a county line or a city boundary.
Right.
To what extent, whether it be the opioid crisis or other things, is Washtenaw County simply part of Southeast Michigan and that pretty much every county is facing the same thing? And as a follow-up before you've answered, are there efforts to coordinate within Southeast Michigan in dealing with some of these issues?
Well, sure. No, we're not an island unto ourselves. You know, Washtenaw City sits in that 94, or along that 94 corridor. So we get some of the impacts of what's going on east of us and west of us, north of us and south of us. And yeah, we're part of a number of different collaboratives, right? So LawNet is this Livingston and Washtenaw County narcotics enforcement team that really sits under the umbrella of the state police. We have a good relationship with the state police. We are part of a number of different units. So we're part of federal apprehension team. We do work with the DEA and the ATF. So we're part of this larger criminal justice construct that needs to be in place to address criminal issues.
One you mentioned state police, and it's always been confusing to me. What role does the state police play within the county? I mean, it seems like the only time I see them is on the highway, and you know, what role do they have?
So I will resist the urge as a sheriff to make a joke that I'm still trying to figure out what the state police does as well. I will resist that.
Do we have any state police headquarters in Washtenaw County anymore?
No.
Because there was one on Washtenaw.
On Whitaker Road in
yeah.
Ypsilanti Township, which is now the township bought that property and now it's a community station for us. No, the state police post is more regional and it's in Livingston County.
Okay.
So those troopers that patrol Washtenaw County are dispatched from Brighton, from their Brighton post. So there is a presence of state police. And they usually fill the void, so in areas of the county that don't have their own police agency and have not contracted with the sheriff, oftentimes the first response is going to be state police.
Okay. And looking once again at Southeast Michigan, are there programs or plans to do more things, or are you now focusing really on within Washtenaw what you can make better?
So really our focus is internal to Washtenaw County. My plans and our focus for the next 18 months is we're making a really big move of our dispatch location to Z Road.
Right.
And the reason why that's important, because we're really looking at an emergency communications center. We'll leverage the road commission's video system that'll give us eyes and ears throughout the county. We bring in emergency management, so we'll have more of a coordinated response county-wide to emergencies, hazmat emergencies, or whatever those emergencies are. So that's really important. The other piece for us, I got to tell you, Jim, is around staffing. We've invested a lot of time and resources to having our own HR department to come in and really try to boost
and
as
this
much
is
staffing
beyond
as possible.
the staffing needs of the jail.
Yes.
This is within you might say the rest of the department.
Exactly, and that's the challenge for us. And to some degree, I will argue we've been a victim of our own success, right?
Yeah.
We've grown quite a bit as an organization, and really the challenge for us is to make sure that we have an adequate number of qualified staff delivering the kinds of service that Washtenaw County expects.
Another area, deputies. Outside of the jail, are you 15% lower there, or where do you stand on the staffing?
No, we're right around 8 to 10%.
Oh, okay.
We're facing a lot of retirement. So we've looked over the years. We're getting ready to have 5 deputies retire here over the next couple of months. So now what we're doing is we're sponsoring new employees. So for a long period of time, over probably the last decade, you went and put yourself through the academy, paid for it yourself, and then you came and see if an agency would hire you. Now we're going back to the way you used to do it in the old days, where we would interview you. Yep, you're a good fit. Guess what, Jim? We'll pay for you to go to the academy. We'll pay you while you're there, and then we'll bring you on as an employee. Today, I spent some time interviewing 2 folks that are potential candidates for sponsorship. So that's a little bit of a change in a lot of our focus.
Final, you'd say 30 seconds here. 6 months from now, the public thinks it sees the Sheriff's Department in what way?
I think hopefully they continue to see us as a quality service provider that understands the role the leadership role that we play in the community, that stays committed to providing the best service, and an organization is committed to partnership. That we may be the experts in the police business, but you're the expert in what makes your community great, and we work together to achieve that.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you here and updating both you and the department and all other aspects of Washtenaw County.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to thank our viewers for joining us today. Look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.